Hi, my name is Tanya Steele, and I'm a safety advisor, and I have 3 tips today on how to be successful during your COR audit. I've been a safety advisor in safety for about 24 plus years, and I've worked in many industries, from mining to construction to the hospitality industry to farming to the film industry. I'm mostly in construction now. That's where my heart is. But what I've found is that no matter what industry you're in and what COR you're doing, that there is really the same thread that exists. And so I'm going to give you what I believe those 3 tips are for you to be successful. So tip number one is making sure that your auditor is an auditor reviewer, not an auditor document finder. For example, when I go do an audit, sometimes the documentation is not organized. And so I'll ask the employer or the person that's with me, hey, I need to find this particular piece of paper. And about 45 minutes later, they come with that one piece of paper. And I end up becoming an audit document finder, not an auditor or a reviewer of documentation. Same with electronics. Some people have done their documents electronic and they scan them in and they put them in their C drive or D drive, and then they make folders for them, which is great. And I've done an audit like that recently, and I had 3 people in the room that had their laptops in front of them, and their job was anytime I asked for a piece of paper that they would go and find it and pull it up for me on the big huge screen that was there. But it still took, on average, about 15 to 20 minutes for them to find every piece of paper. Because what they found is, well, it's not in this file folder, it should be here, and it wasn't scanned in, or the dates are wrong, or now there's new folders that have been created and they had to try to find it, or the file name that they gave it was completely different, and so they just couldn't find it quickly and easily. One thing I love about safety programs such as Site Docs is documentation is organized and it's easy to find. They have a search bar just like Google where you can type in a document and it'll easily pop up for you. As an auditor, I can get into their administration and find any of the forms that I need to look up because it's very easy, it's simple, and it walks me through it step by step. And so step number 1, or tip number 1, is make sure that all of your documentation is easy to find for your auditor. Step 2 is make sure that your documents are complete. That means all your fields are filled out. I was recently at an audit where I had to review like over 1,000 hazard assessments. And when we started going through it, we noticed that certain fields started consistently not being filled out, and even certain sections. And so I had to get rid of or not include those particular hazard assessments inside the COR. And like I said, there was like 1,000 of them. And by the time we were said and done, there's only about 250 of them that were filled out correctly. And that does not meet the 80% requirement for the documentation. What I love about programs such as Site Docs is the required fields. So they're required fields that have to be filled out. So for example, a corrective action. When a corrective action has been flagged, a supervisor can find out if in fact it has been completed or not be completed. And so this ensures that nothing is left blank on your documentation. So tip number 2, make sure that all of your documentation is complete. That brings us to tip number 3, training. A lot of people will ask me, well, Tanya, can we give out all of the audit questions to the workers so that they can study them before the audit? My response is always, yes, you can, but you want to be careful that you're not necessarily setting them up for a quiz or an exam, because that's not what the audit is. The audit really is about informing the workers, so absolutely give the questions to the workers because they need to be informed of all of the information that's in the audit. What I find, though, is that a lot of companies or employers will give them the questions and say, here's the questions, read the answers, as opposed to really spending some time informing them or training them appropriately. For example, Crew Talks and Toolbox Talks. It's an incredible tool to use to reach your workers. But it's not just about telling your workers, so hey guys, let's meet this morning and I'm going to tell you this is what you need to say when the auditor comes. I'm talking about things like grabbing your corporate company policy. You can print out the company policy, or if you have it electronic, you can get them to pull out their mobile devices and they can have their device right there in front of them. They can review the company policy and then just tell them to read it on the spot and then to give you something that they learned when they read it, or something that stood out for them. So I'll have them read the corporate policy, and then I'll go around the room and say, so what do you think? What do you think that meant to you? Or what did it say? Or what did you find that, oh, I didn't know that. That was interesting. Because we know that people learn when they speak information, not necessarily when they hear it. Some of the statistics are people only remember 10% of what they read. But if I actually say it or speak it out, then I'm going to remember it. And that's the whole goal. The whole goal is that your workers are informed and that they actually remember it, as opposed to, you telling the information and then they don't know the answer. And then you as the employer say, well, I told them all this stuff. Well, let's train them efficiently and effectively and get them involved in the training. And that's my 3 tips on how you can be successful at your COR. Have a great day.